This is lesson number 4 in the Racing Lawn Mower Quick Start Guide. What I'm going to cover in this lesson is, in my previous lessons I talked about concepts. You know, don't be literal. You can follow this guide exactly, but really what the goal of this is to just show you the concepts of what changes are made to the machines. So what I have here is I have 4 different machines. They're all, well, one of them's not the same class. The orange one is not. It is an SPE. The governor's been removed and the gearing's a little bit different. But the rest of them are IMO, which is what we're going to be building in this quick start guide, the one that I'll be working through for next season. So what I want to show here is I'm just going to point out the variations on how these different builders or racers accomplish the goals or objectives as they built their machine. So we'll start with the blue one first. What I want to show you, we'll start with the front end and just work back. So this front end right down here, if you can get down here and see, it has got, there we go, that's not working out. Let me move to this side. It has got a, there. This has got a single heim joint front end. So what it is it's a 3/4 inch bolt. We use bearings in the front end. It's got a heim joint on the bottom. That allows me to pitch it in and out, caster camber. And it is just a piece of C-channel with another bolt going through it. So then what we have here is our pivot. Let's see if we can find the pivot right there. And you can see the linkage, the 2 steering bars that run over. Kind of like a go-kart front end. So, not really extensive. It is a piece of square tubing, and it's been welded, and then I bolted up into the frame. Now this is the Sears frame. The other thing that I want to show you is the hand throttle. This is just a brake lever off of a mountain bike. That turns around and runs down to pull on the linkage of the carburetor right there. So if I pull this, which I won't be able to do, the hood will fall, so I won't do that one. The other thing I want to show you is the shifting mechanism. This is the shift lever right here. We get that up closer to the steering wheel so that you can downshift, upshift faster as needed. It's also got a kill switch. That is one of the rules. It's a tether. You can pick those up at any off-road place for ATVs or whatnot. They're about $15. It's got a good metal steering wheel. And then the thing in the middle is a tachometer. So the other thing that's been done on this one is it has what we call confidence bars. These butt bars right here. Those are, you're cornering so hard sometimes that you have a tendency to slide. It tries to slide you out of the seat. And so what these do is these give you kind of a spot to kind of hang on with. You'll see a lot of them will have them. And then we have a rear bumper. This is one of the only ones that does have the rear bumper. With the rule set that we follow, those are allowed. And with the rule set that I'm following as well, the front bumper, if it's a stock, factory stock bumper, it's allowed. Now the other thing I want to note on this is a 2-pedal setup. There are 2 pedals. The left one is clutch and the right one is the brake. Now from the factory they don't come that way. Most lawnmowers have 1 pedal and it does clutch and brake at the same time. The thing about the disadvantage to that is when you're racing, the way they're engineered from the factory is you have to push through the clutch, disengage the belt, before it starts applying the brakes. So if you do the 2-pedal setup, you can leave the drivetrain, the belt, everything engaged, and just tap the brakes. And a lot of times that makes the difference whether you pull the corner or not, or whether you keep the corner from the guy behind you. So this one right here, we'll start at the front. This one right here is similar. It's got a square piece of tubing for the front end there. It's got a bottom hind joint. Let me get over on this other side, maybe you can see better. There we go. Similar to the other one that I just showed you. A little bit bigger hind joint. You can see the steering rod back there that runs to a centerpiece in the middle. So they're not overly complex to build the steering. This one here is a single pedal. Now he left the factory stock configuration on the mower from the factory. So what he does is one pedal, it does both clutching and brake. So the first little bit, quarter of a pedal, is going to be the clutch part, which disengages the drive belt, and then if he goes a little farther, it's going to turn around and apply the brakes. So this too has the hand throttle. This one I can show as I push the hand throttle, which is just another brake lever. Then it turns around and pulls that. Now these are governed, so all it's doing is pulling the linkage. We leave the governor in the motor. So this is where he's put his shift lever. And if you notice, this one does sit a little lower. The blue one I just showed you is not all the way. It's not as lowered as far as it could be with the rules, but it was as far as I wanted to go for the first one. You can also see on the green one here, he's got his confidence bar. Most of the racing we do is we turn left, so his little confidence bar that he put on his seat is just right there. Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm going to show you inside here. This is the top belt mechanism. It's got an idler and that top belt, and then it runs to a jack shaft piece. And I don't think you can see the jack shaft. And then this right down here is the shift linkage. So on this one, you can see it a little bit better. He's got that top idler pulley for the transaxle. This is the Peerless transaxle. This one right here is another Peerless transaxle. So this next one, this is an SP. This one does not compete with these other two. It's got a different configuration on the front end. Still a single hind joint, but upside down. So you can take a look and see the pivot down there for the steering. Takes the direction from forward to back from the steering wheel and moves it left to right for the outer wheels. So once again, it's just a 5/8 bolt welded to a piece of angle, a couple holes drilled in it, and you've got a bolt going down through the axle, and then you've got a bolt which bolts in the top hind joint, which allows you to adjust that caster camber. The caster camber is important because when you're going around the corner at higher speeds, it wants to pitch on you. It wants to roll. So, and you'll notice with both of these machines, they've got a good metal steering wheel. So if you're looking at getting into this, keep your eye out for a steering wheel kicking around. So the last one that I'm going to show you, I'm going to go back. This orange one, it does not have a transaxle. It has the right angle transmission, that Peerless 700. So what it does is it comes down to a solid axle. It's sitting in there and it spins in a bearing configuration, bearing hangers, and then it is a chain drive. The reason I point that out is this other one right here is the same. So let's look at the front end first. This one right here is a double pedal setup. The orange one is a double pedal setup. Left pedal clutch, right pedal brake. This one is a double Heim setup. So he used a flat piece of plate for his axle, bolted that in. He's got his 5/8 bolt, which is his spindle, and then he's using double Heim joints to be able to pitch his tire, get caster camber. So This one here is an MTD frame. We discussed MTD frames versus Sears frames the other day. This one right here is a Sears frame. And the blue one is a Sears frame as well. If you look at what I mean about being able to move things around, you look down in there, you'll see the steering shaft. Just a nice flat spot to be able to mount your bottom bushing. And he's using a U-joint and a bearing carrier. So it's just a pillow block. Now, this blue one, it is using, I don't know if you can see it very well. You can't. So we'll move on to the orange one. The orange one shows it quite well. The orange one is also one of mine. These are some other racers I borrowed. The orange one uses a bushing setup. So what I've got there is just a little piece of angle that, or flat bar that I've welded, and then I have a collet, and then I have a bronze bushing, and I can replace the bushing at any time. So, and I do the same on the top. On the top piece, I have turned around and done the same configuration where I put a collet, and then this little lip right here is actually a bronze bushing. So this blue one on the top end is not. This is just a big washer welded to a piece of pipe, and it functions as that top bushing. Now, one of the things you want to keep in mind with steering, you've got to try to minimize the left-right flex in it, and you also want to minimize upward-down movement. So I use this right here to stop the upward-down movement. So let's get back to the green one. The green one has got a good solid steering wheel. He's got his hand throttle right there. But this one has got this right angle transmission. Now, we didn't talk much about right angle transmissions. I did discuss that you might end up having to go this route with walkthrough because of the lower clearance down through this area. What this is a Peerless 700, and it's called a right angle transmission because it takes the horizontal movement of the motor and turns around and spits it out to a chain, so you've got a forward motion movement, and you can see his drive chain that goes back to the axle. The other thing, now we can get a better shot. When you start getting into this, get down in there, you can see his sprocket, you can see his tensioner, his idler, and this is just a solid axle you can pick up online. Some machine shops will build them for you. They're keyed, they have a key stock in them. And then this is his brake mechanism. It's got a disc brake mounted to the axle, and it's hung with bushings, bearings. So I'm not sure exactly what type of bearings. There's a shot of the bearing. And what he's done is he's used a pillow block. Just put his axle in there, hooked up his drive sprocket, his brake mechanism, probably off of a four-wheeler or something like that. So that's a kind of a down and dirty real quick, just to show you the different variations of what can be done. You can see that this one's been lowered a lot lower. You compare this one and the orange one. The orange one sits quite a bit higher. It has not been lowered. And the green one has been lowered. So I think that's about all I really wanted to show with this, was just how you can modify them. Like I say, it depends on what resources you have available, what you're comfortable with. There's a lot of different factors. You know, you don't want to get carried away on them. It's just a hobby. But I would tell you at this point, you know, take your time. Spend the money where you need to, and get something that's reliable. Get the frame reliable, get the chassis reliable. You know, do bearings if you're comfortable with that, or Do some good heim joint front ends. It'll make the difference. You know, you start pushing around dirt tracks at pretty good speeds, you know, the front end starts to drift. That's when you're going to want to be able to pitch the tires in, get that edge to catch, that type of stuff. That's where you get into the competitiveness. But when you do that, you want it to be reliable as well. So I think that's all I've got for today. And I think we're about ready to move into the shop and start building.